which is right now. So it's 11 o'clock. Welcome. My name is Greg Chambers with US Farm Data. And today we're going to be talking about, this is in our lead generation webinar series. It's got to be like number 7, maybe number 8 of the dozen that we have planned. And this one is a topic, again, this is probably a little bit more data wonky, unsexy, but we consider it vital for the future. And we're going to be talking about the magic of customer profiling for finding new business. There we go. So we'll cover today, we'll talk about a definition of what is customer profiling, just to make sure when I say customer profiling, what is it that I mean by that? I'll give you some stories and examples. I'll introduce a low-tech scoring grid, which some of you may be using already, so that it's review. And for others, it's something that you can introduce inside your company and look like a genius. And then we'll talk about account-based marketing, which is the ABM is the sexier topic that maybe I could have retitled it. And driven a little more interest in this. And then we're going to wrap everything up. So as always, if you have questions, the chat box, so it looks like Nui's already put in there. If you have a question, go ahead and use the chat box, or you can use the Q&A section. It will be, Nui is helping me, she's moderating it, and I'm going to kind of move on. This should take somewhere around 30 minutes. And if we have questions, I am happy to answer them for you. But first, I want to start with a quick little story. So one of the things we do at US Farm Data is, in addition to providing lists, is we end up doing some business development or new business consulting with different businesses, especially here in the community. And we were working with, or there's a startup, a guy with a great idea, and he's coming around, and we bump into him probably once every couple months. And it's a big marketplace idea that has a lot of moving parts, a big idea with the guy with few resources. But one of the things that we told him was, get some information, start putting some real data behind this before you put too much work into it. So this last time I bumped into him, which was 2 weeks ago, he shows me, he has this ashen look on his face because he's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was going to be so expensive to build. And I'm like, oh, well, what'd you find out? And he proceeds to hand me, it had to be an 8 to 10 page proposal. And I'm, the total on it, because I flipped to the back page, is $100,000. So he needs this information, but I'm fascinated now by this 10 page proposal that he has in front of me, because this guy, he has nothing but an idea. And I asked him, how long did it take for you to get this from the last time that we talked? And he said, oh, there was a couple reschedules, but we got together for about an hour. And then it took him about 10 days, 10 days, 2 weeks to get this proposal to me. And this proposal, I happen to know the guys who put this proposal together for him. It is detailed. And I know if I asked them and if I started to give them a hard time about how much time they've put into this, they would say, Greg, we love to talk about, new projects and hear what people are thinking. And, it really didn't take that much time to put it together. It's a lot of boilerplate information. My point to them is that all prospects, if you're not careful, everybody is exciting, but they may be unqualified. And in this guy's case, he is not who they do big, expensive projects, and he is not in their target market. Now, he needed information. So to be nice to him, they could give him information, but this conversation could have gone about, 50 minutes. Well, certainly they could have done the whole thing without having to create any sort of proposal. And it's just one question, which is, they could talk to him. Let's say his name was Ted. Hey, Ted, just as a ballpark, we've seen projects like this before, and they can run anywhere from $75,000 to $125,000, right? It's a very inexact number because we need to ask a lot of questions of you, but just as a ballpark figure, how does that sound? He would have freaked out right there in front of them. And then maybe he might have recovered and then asked, like, well, do you work on equity? Is there any chance that you just want to join my company and help me build this? There's a lot of different directions it could have gone, but it would have given him the information that he needed, and it would have still allowed them to be excited by the idea of something like a marketplace that this guy was proposing. My big point in all of this is that time is our non-renewable resource, right? It's the one thing that we don't get back. And so without a strong customer profile in mind, which in this case would include budget, if every project you do is $100,000, you need to make sure that the people probably have A, spent that before, or B, even have that available to them before you spend too much time with them, because you could spend that time with somebody else who's more qualified, is the big point, right? And so why would this be important to you and to all of us? It's, well, because as we're looking ahead into the future, one of the things that's coming down the pike is a lot of artificial intelligence. Right? It's going to help us with our sales and marketing. It's helping companies already with a lot of different things, AI and machine learning. But in order to take advantage of it, you got to get your stuff together, right? You got to get your poop in a group, as my friend Dave used to say, get your poop in a group. This article just came out from McKinsey, and it's a study that they did internally. So McKinsey, I look to them all the time because I think they're right. They're giant, and they do giant projects with giant companies. As an example, last summer I read about something that they got in trouble with because they were doing a $700 million project with a province in India, something like that. And I was like, $700 million. It's just so big. But if they do great big things with great big companies, and their internal report is saying that AI adoption at big, the reason it's not scaling is because a lot of the foundational building blocks are missing. Specifically, relevant data is that can be accessible by AI cannot be accessed. Okay, right now we're right back into, if the small companies like us and the ones that we deal with, if big companies that have all the resources are having this issue, then as small companies, what can we do today that is going to, that will be able to help us? That's kind of where this customer profiling piece comes from. So just so we're on the same page. So to win the future, we're going to have to start now. So with all that in mind, what is profiling? Greg, when you say profiling, what is it that you're talking about, just so we're on the same page? For us, it starts with defining who you are, right? So who am I? What is it that I sell? Where's my sweet spot? Like, where is it that we like to work, and how well can that be defined? And then who are our customers? And when I say who are our customers, describing things, there's a couple things that go on in marketing. One is that people talk about personas. Like, this is who we're marketing to, and we need to think of them as people, and give them a name. So like in this case, right, Becky or Carol, 32, young professional. What I'm talking about when I talk about customer profiling is less like a persona, who to market to, and more like the target market that we're trying to get to. Manufacturers, 10 plus years, under 100 employees. Going back up to her example, women, young professional women that are, age, 30 to 40 or whatever it is, that have Pinterest accounts, things like that. Might be more of what I'm talking about when I talk about what customer profiling is. So less about how it is that we're going to be making copy, more about who actually just kind of fits. Like, what is the, on the market research project, it would be who actually fits into our database, and then how big are they? So to get there, the very first thing we got to do is usually when we have, we start with our own customers, right? So to do customer profiling, I should probably say, probably should have added up in here, to do customer profiling, you need customers, right? So like a startup exercise that my guy who was in my first example, he can't do a lot of customer profiling. He can do a lot of market research, and he can do some customer profile guessing, but he can't do much profiling. When we do customer profiling, we do need a database of customers that we can compare. So the first thing we do is we have to clean up our customer data. What is the best customer data is generally inside of accounting, right? Because the bills need to be correct in order to get paid. And so that's where we have the most accurate information about who our customers are, how much they've spent, everything else. So the first place we do when we're trying to build a customer profile marketing database is we work on the quality aspect. Can we dedupe? Can we standardize? We verify the information. Can we add things like the national change of address from the Postal Service, geocode information? And then we start to build processes internally that say, this is where all the information goes, right? It sounds pretty basic to say that we qualify, we worry about quality and then we verify the information. And then we have some internal standards that we uphold. But we bump into databases all the time where something like, say you sell to insurance companies, so you have Allstate in your database. How are we going to list those, right? Because they're in the database. We found 350 instances of Allstate in the database. Are we going to lump everything up under the corporate office? Are we using branches as their own standalone companies? What do we do about DBAs? Like, Greg Chambers, in the Allstate agent. What are we going to do with him? So getting it all standardized, is our state field going to be NE like the post office wants for Nebraska? Is it going to be NEB because that's what our people are used to? We have an older crowd that does NEB, or is it going to be spelled out Nebraska, and then we'll have multiple fields, one for mailing and one for spelling out? Whatever the process is, it just needs to be standardized internally for high quality data, and that's how it gets shared well. Once we have it, the information standardized, then it's a lot easier to add information to it. And the information specifically that we look for is some form of third-party information. The reason is because if it's if somebody has tried to populate an entire database, for instance, US farm data, if we're trying to put all this information on all these farmers and ranchers, one of the things that that ends up happening is that we have to standardize everything, which is what you just did to your database. Plus we model, and when we're modeling, we're trying to be consistent all the way through. So for instance, if we were marketing to farmers and ranchers, other fields that we can start adding is how are they listed as far as what crops are they, crops or livestock are they producing on that farm? What is the size? How many years have they been in this database? What other context do we have there? Are there any social media profiles? Technology, is there anything we have on equipment that we can overlay onto this database? All this information can be added in there, and that's what makes it useful as we're trying to build, as we're going to analyze it so that we can figure out what our customer profiling is. So let me give you an example. This is one that we're doing internally. So we've launched this product, the LeadGen Compass, and inside of our database, this is what we have. And I don't know if you can see what these are, but we have a customer ID. We have, first and last name, the company name information. We have when they signed up, what we last charged them, right? It's good accounting information. As we talk to the sales reps, as they're finding new customers, one of the things we ask them is, what are they looking for, right? And we're listening for fields that we could find that happen inside of the sales process. So in this case, since we do work on websites, they ask about websites, they ask about analytics, whether it's present or not. They talk about whether or not they're using audiences to market, like retargeting, things like that, newsletters, target markets, LinkedIn, social media. So if they're asking all those questions, then we try to find that information and append it where we can find it, and then look for other third-party information that they didn't even say, right? Like, what is their industry, or what is their size? How many years they've been in business? What are their titles of, what are the titles of the context? Because from that, what we can do is we can start to figure out, sorry, I'm going to catch up on my page here. But we can say, hey, we have this information. Now we can start to learn a little bit more about who these people are, and then tease out any information that would help our sales reps save time as we're moving forward. So once we have standardized information, and once we've appended some information to it, we can start to build these customer profiles. So this is the simple scoring system that you can take to the top, because we're going to try to take this database, and in a broad sense, we just say, hey, can we make them into A's, B's, and C's? so all that information that we just talked about, we need to kind of weigh. The first thing we do is we just weigh how important is that really to the sale. How important is the presence of a website, for instance? That may not be the most important thing to it, because we're going to do the work anyways, but whether or not they have ever used an outsourced solution may be more important. So we're going to weigh the importance of the information in how we make the sale. We're going to score the prospect by the field. So we're going to come up with a scoring system about that information. And then we're going to give them a total score and decide on a course of action. So let me show you how this whole thing works. So if 1 is not important, for instance, and 10 is vital to the success, to our success in putting this together, crops, like how important are crops? In this example, we say that, oh, crops, that's like a 7 out of 10. It's pretty important, but it's not like vital. It's not a 10 out of 10, but it's more important than not. But farm size is a little more important than crop. But whether or not like there's an owner field that shows whether or not they're an absentee owner, that's actually not very critical to the product that we happen to be selling, because the decision, we don't need the decision maker there in order to make this information. Then we have to go through each of those fields and we kind of score what we're doing. So if we're selling a product, we're selling fertilizer that just happens to be best for soybeans, that's a 9 out of 10 on that scale. Corn, it's there's other products that are better, so it's less important to us. Wheat is even less important than that. But farm size may be something that pops out where we say, we really, our sweet spot is kind of between 50 and 250 acres. If it's less than that, it's still okay. If it's more than that, it's pretty good. But gosh, if it's a tiny farm, if it's less than 50 acres, then that's even less important to us. So now that we have this information, we can start to build a score where we say, hey, if the crop is soybeans, that we just gave that a 9, so that's important to us. And then, but crop itself is a 7 out of 10. So for crop, this prospect scores a 63. For size, it's a really small farm, and we had put an importance factor of 4 on that, right? And but farm size is still pretty important, so we say that scores 32, et cetera, et cetera. As you can imagine, we start to build up some criteria here. We say that there's 500 points possible in our scoring system, and what did they score? They scored, in general, what we say is it's kind of like the kids in school, right? If it's a 90 or above, then you have to follow up with them. Prioritize those over the people who score 65% or below. So for instance, inside of a spreadsheet, and we'll give you access to this, when we send out the recording, there will be a sample spreadsheet that's in there. With this sample profile scoring system, right, you can see where it's like, it has the field going down the left in column A. We rank the importance, and then we give a scoring system to it. And then when we bump into a prospect like ABC Manufacturing, then we have to go through and score them. So it's the importance to the sales cycle ends up being that 8765 there. And then the prospect score, how is it that they score for the total? And then we give them a max score and a total that they scored. And then we come up with a grade. In this case, 79%. So what I would tell the reps is, if, minus anybody who's 85 or above, follow up with this person, the next most often, but let's go look for people who score maybe a little bit higher in that piece. And the reason you want to do this is going back all the way to this account-based management or account-based marketing is focusing sales, right? So if account-based marketing is supposed to be where we focus sales and marketing resources on target accounts within a specific market, if that's the goal, this scoring system helps us get to who is it that we actually would focus these marketing resources to. And the reason we need to get into this world, as an example, is I put up this graphic of the MarTech 5000. So this is literally, these are 5,000 companies that are in the marketing technology landscape right now. So advertising and promotion is on this far left. On the far right is different ways to help you manage, but there's data in there. There's, commerce. There's a few other companies that are focused on these things. All of these companies unless we've taken the time to go through and do our own customer profiling, when these companies come knocking on our doors saying, hey, we can help you sell more, one of the things that will happen to us is that we're going to be sucked into their best practice. And account-based marketing it's a feature of a marketing system. In order for that to, for us to take the most advantage of that, it would help to have our customer profiling down, right? So that we can take our best practices internally and have these companies and all the future companies that are coming, have them help us do what, get in front of those customers better, faster, more profitably than it would be to have these companies come to us and say, you know what, if you don't have a best customer system, this is kind of how we think that you should do it, which is what we see in the marketplace happening right now all the time. My son actually works for one of a company that is in the MarTech 5000. And one of the things he told me is, oh, we're going to start a consulting arm because most people don't know how to use our software. So we're going to give them all the best practices on how to use it. And I'm like, that sounds great, but I know exactly what's going to happen. You guys are going to try to overlay things that don't fit inside of these organizations, especially some of these mid-sized and small organizations where it's really critical that everybody is bought into the process. So customer profiling is important simply because you need to do what fits for you. The way to do it is to make sure you know who it is that your best people are to get in front of, right? And the way to do that is to use customer profiling and actually apply it, or so you don't get lost like that person in the very first story I told you, that little app development company, who if they ever hear this webinar, they're going to be like, Greg, be nice. But I'm like, guys, you're wasting time. Don't waste time with those people. If you want that, one of the easier ways to increase sales is just spend more time in front of your best prospects. Easier said than done. You got to do a little work to identify who those people are and then ask those questions so that you can build your own scoring system and put it forward. So the reason profiling is important, again, is because the future is going to be artificial intelligence. And so you need to be ready for that. Your data needs to be ready for that. It all starts with doing the basics of just data hygiene, cleaning up your information, then add third-party information, and then use that simple scoring system. Again, if you take that scoring system and then just even start an internal conversation, it's amazing what happens when you bring salespeople and marketing people and the big bosses together to say, how important is this field to us? And then how would we score it? Like, what is the difference between a 2 and an 8? Drawing out those distinctions and differences does wonders for getting people energized and getting you in front of better customers. So once you can segment and score that those people, then you can start to work on something like account-based marketing, where now you can go through and identify all those top markets and or all those top prospects. And even if you're not in front of them today, you can get in front of them going forward. So starting today, if I had any assignment for you, it would be this, cleansing and standardizing. It's work that we do here if you need help with it. Otherwise, there's a lot of data processors, and there's other people who can you can hire out to do projects for this. We actually do some of this work ourselves using Upwork, just because there's some great data processing companies out there that will take on these projects without charging you a fortune. So with that in mind, since you've made it through this far, if you don't have any questions, I don't see any questions, so I'm just going to keep on task here. We will give you a copy of these books. The Human Being's Guide to Business Growth gives you ideas about how to grow your business, how to get everybody involved. It's a real easy way to find new businesses, to get, actually a project like customer profiling is a great project to get everybody involved and looking for your best prospects. The perfect growth formula is a way for sales and marketing to get on the same page with how they're talking to each other. And then LeadGen Compass is a company where when you're trying to tie all this stuff together, it's an outsourced solution where you can kind of layer us on top of your existing marketing and sales people. And what will happen is we will usually, we're like salt, we enhance the flavor, we enhance the effectiveness of the group. So if you have questions, I'm Greg Chambers. I'm at usfarmdata.com, leadgencompass.com. I'm also there. And that's a phone number where you can get in touch with us. And if you have any questions, you can send it to info@usfarmdata.com. Bill Matern gets those, and he will help you and get you pointed in the right direction. With that in mind, it's almost Thanksgiving. My house is full. House is full of kids. And so enjoy your afternoon, enjoy Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you on the next one. Thanks.